Poor guy. Sat at the wrong table on a blind date, never thought she was a millionaire, and fell in love with him. The elegant chandeliers sparkled above as the soft murmur of conversations filled the air of Le Jardin, one of New York's finest restaurants. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables, their silver trays balancing delicate flutes of champagne and plates of expertly crafted dishes. James stood near the entrance, tugging nervously at the sleeves of his worn, slightly oversized navy blazer. His best friend Mark had insisted this blind date would be the one, but as James scanned the room filled with patrons dressed in designer outfits, he felt painfully out of place. He smoothed his tie, one he had borrowed from Mark, and clutched a crumpled note in his hand. Table 12. Her name is Victoria. Be yourself and don't mess this up. Taking a deep breath, James approached the host stand, his shoes scuffing slightly against the polished marble floor. Reservation for James. Table 12? He asked, his voice cracking slightly. The host gave a polite nod and gestured toward the far end of the restaurant. At table 12, Natalie sat alone, absently stirring her glass of sparkling water. Dressed in an elegant yet simple black dress, her hair swept into a sophisticated chignon, she exuded a quiet grace that turned heads. But she wasn't there to impress anyone. Tonight wasn't about wealth or reputation, it was about finding someone genuine, someone who could see past her fortune and recognize her for who she truly was. That's why she had agreed to this blind date, urging her assistant to avoid mentioning her last name or status. No articles, no background, just Natalie. James spotted the table from across the room. He swallowed hard. Wow, she's way out of my league. Steeling himself, he approached, his steps slightly hesitant. Natalie? He asked, his voice careful but warm. Natalie looked up, her perfectly shaped brows raising slightly. She blinked, clearly surprised. You're not who I expected, she said, eyeing him curiously. James froze, his face flushed. This is table 12, right? Natalie tilted her head, studying him for a heartbeat longer than necessary. There was no arrogance in his expression, no rehearsed charm. Just pure awkward sincerity. Yes, this is table 12, she said slowly. James exhaled a shaky breath and sat down, trying to keep his trembling hands beneath the table. I'm really sorry. My friend Mark set this up. Blind date, he said. Natalie's lips curved into a slight smile. A blind date, I see. James chuckled nervously. Yeah, I hope I'm not disappointing. I didn't realize I was supposed to dress for the Oscars. Natalie's smile softened. You're fine. Really. A waiter appeared, offering meanness and pouring wine. James fumbled slightly with his glass, nearly knocking it over before managing to steady it. Natalie watched him with quiet amusement. There was no pretense in his clumsiness, no calculated charm, just a man who seemed genuinely out of his element. So, James, she said, breaking the silence, tell me about yourself. James shifted in his chair. Nothing too interesting, really. I work at a bookstore. Vintage books, mostly. Been there for years. I guess you could say I have a thing for stories. Natalie's eyes brightened. Stories. That's refreshing. Most people I meet talk about stocks and investments. James nodded. I'm sure that stuff's important. But I've always thought books are more human, you know? They teach us things about life that money can't. Natalie tilted her head thoughtfully. I couldn't agree more. James relaxed slightly, encouraged by her response. What about you? What do you do? Natalie hesitated. She could say the truth, that she was the CEO of one of the country's largest luxury brands, but instead, she chose the version she wished people saw. I work in philanthropy, she said carefully. Helping charities, supporting local businesses. It's fulfilling. James smiled, nodding. That's amazing. I've always admired people who give back. Honestly, it feels rare these days. Natalie felt a pang in her chest. Rare indeed, especially in her circles where wealth often overshadowed compassion. The evening continued with effortless conversation. James talked about his love for classic literature, and Natalie shared stories from her travels, carefully avoiding any mention of private jets or five-star resorts. By the time dessert arrived, Natalie found herself genuinely intrigued. James wasn't like the men she usually met, those who chased status and flaunted wealth. But what truly caught her off guard was the way James listened. He wasn't just nodding to be polite, he genuinely cared about her words. As the check arrived, James paled slightly, glancing at the bill. His stomach tightened. It was far more than he could afford. Stay calm, play it cool. Natalie noticed his discomfort and without a word discreetly slipped her credit card into the check holder when James wasn't looking. Outside the restaurant, the cool night air wrapped around them as they stood beneath the soft glow of the streetlights. "This was really nice," James said, his voice sincere. Natalie nodded, her gaze lingering on his. "It was. Thank you for tonight, James. I'd like to see you again, if you'd be interested." Natalie hesitated, her heart pounding. For once she wasn't sure if she was being liked for herself or the life she had hidden. "I'd like that," she finally said, offering a warm smile. And as James walked away that night, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just met someone truly special, without realizing just how extraordinary she really was. The following evening, James and Natalie met again, this time at a quieter cafe tucked away from the bustling streets of New York. The atmosphere was warm, with soft jazz playing in the background and dim lighting that made the space feel more intimate. James arrived first, his hands nervously clutching a second-hand book wrapped in brown paper, an old edition of Pride and Prejudice he had found at his store, a simple yet thoughtful gift he hoped Natalie would appreciate. When she entered wearing a cozy cream sweater and jeans, James felt his heartbeat quicken. She looked effortlessly elegant, yet so approachable. "James," she greeted warmly, sitting across from him. "It's good to see you again." "You too," he replied, sliding the book toward her with an awkward smile. I brought you something. I noticed you mentioned enjoying stories last time, so this is one of my favorites." Natalie blinked, genuinely touched. "You brought me a book." James nodded, his cheeks tinged pink. "Yeah, it's not much, but—" "No, it's perfect," she interrupted, carefully unwrapping it and running her fingers over the worn cover. "This is incredibly thoughtful, James. Thank you." As their coffees arrived, the conversation began to flow more easily. "So," Natalie asked, "you work at a bookstore. How did that happen?" James chuckled softly, stirring his cup. "It's not as glamorous as it sounds. I grew up loving books. My mom used to read to me every night when I was little, everything from classic novels to fairy tales. When she passed away, books became my escape. They felt safe." Natalie listened intently, her heart aching slightly at the vulnerability in his voice. "I wanted to be a writer once," James continued. "But, well, life gets in the way. I had to drop out of college after my dad got sick, and since then I've just been working to keep things together." Natalie's eyes softened. "That must have been so hard." He nodded. "It was. But the bookstore, it feels like home. I've always dreamed of owning my own place someday. A cozy shop where people can lose themselves in stories the way I did." His words were so raw, so genuine, that Natalie felt a lump rising in her throat. "That's beautiful, James, and I believe you'll get there." James smiled, but there was a trace of sadness behind it. "Maybe. One day. Right now, I'm just trying to make ends meet." Natalie hesitated before sharing her own story, carefully choosing her words. "I work in philanthropy," she said gently, avoiding the full truth. "I help manage projects for local charities, education initiatives, food drives, that kind of thing." James's face lit up with genuine admiration. "That's incredible. You must make a real difference in people's lives." Natalie shrugged modestly. "I try, but it's not always easy. Sometimes people judge you based on appearances or assumptions rather than who you really are." James nodded, his expression sincere. "I get that. It's like people see what they want to see. They don't always take the time to understand what's beneath the surface." Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt as if they were speaking about more than just careers or society. The conversation drifted into lighter topics, favorite books, travel dreams, and even embarrassing childhood memories. James made Natalie laugh with a story about getting locked inside the bookstore during a storm, and Natalie shared an amusing anecdote about volunteering at a pet shelter, where she accidentally mixed up the dogs' feeding schedules. What struck Natalie most was James's sincerity. He wasn't trying to impress her. He was simply being himself, kind, humble, and genuine. And for James, Natalie felt different. There was a quiet grace to her, a warmth that seemed so genuine. She listened, really listened, without judgment or condescension. As the evening wore on, the cafe began to empty, but neither of them seemed ready to leave. James finally broke the silence. "Tonight's been really nice." Natalie smiled, resting her chin on her hand. "It really has. Thank you for sharing so much with me, James. It means a lot." He hesitated before asking, "Would you like to do this again sometime?" Natalie's heart skipped a beat. She could feel herself growing attached, yet a part of her worried. What will happen when he finds out the truth? Still, she pushed the thought aside and nodded gently. I'd love that. As they said their goodbyes outside, the night air crisp around them, James watched her leave, his heart lighter than it had been in years. And Natalie walked away, clutching the worn book closer to her chest, wondering if she had finally met someone who could see her for who she truly was. The weeks that followed were filled with quiet moments of connection. James and Natalie continued to meet regularly, each encounter bringing them closer. Their conversations shifted from casual to deeply personal, with James sharing more about his struggles and Natalie opening up, though still carefully guarding the truth about her wealth. They frequented small, cozy cafes and parks, avoiding the spotlight Natalie was so familiar with. She felt safe with James, seen in a way she hadn't felt in years. And James, he found himself falling hard. But along with those feelings came a quiet fear that lingered in the back of his mind. One evening, as they sat on a park bench overlooking the city skyline, James finally voiced his concern. Natalie, he began, his fingers nervously tapping against his knee, I need to ask you something. She turned to him, her face gentle. What is it? He hesitated, struggling to find the words. I don't understand why you'd be interested in someone like me. I mean, you're brilliant and kind, and I'm just some guy working in a bookstore, barely making rent. Natalie's heart tightened. She wanted to tell him everything, to assure him that she didn't care about wealth or status. But the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she reached for his hand, squeezing it softly. James, you're more than your job. You're passionate. You're thoughtful. And honestly, that's rare. James searched her face for any trace of dishonesty, but found none. Thank you, he whispered. But the doubt lingered. Natalie, too, wrestled with her own fears. She hadn't expected to fall for James. At first it had been curiosity, the allure of someone who saw her as a person, not a headline. But now, every moment with him felt so genuine, so fragile. And yet, the weight of her secret loomed large. Everything came crashing down one rainy afternoon. James had just finished his shift at the bookstore when he decided to stop by their favorite cafe, the one where they had shared their first real conversation. The rain tapped gently against the windows as he ordered a coffee, waiting for Natalie to arrive for their usual meet-up. As he waited, his eyes wandered toward the magazine rack by the counter. That's when he saw it. A glossy lifestyle magazine with Natalie's face staring back at him. The Billionaire Heiress Changing Philanthropy Forever, Natalie Sinclair's Hidden Empire. The article headline screamed out at him, and for a moment, James thought it had to be a mistake. But there she was, in the same stunning smile he had come to know. The same Natalie who had spoken about helping local charities, but had conveniently left out that she was running a global empire. His stomach twisted as he flipped through the pages, skimming details about her vast wealth, luxury properties, and influence in the business world. Was everything a lie? By the time Natalie arrived, James was already seated, the magazine tucked under his arm, his expression unreadable. Hey, she greeted, brushing rain droplets from her coat with a warm smile. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was. Who are you? The question cut through the air like a blade. Natalie blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? She stammered. James pulled the magazine out and placed it on the table between them. This, he said, his voice tight. This is you, a billionaire, the same Natalie who said she just works in philanthropy. Natalie's face drained of color. James, I was going to tell you. I didn't know how. James let out a hollow laugh. You didn't know how? Or you didn't think I was worth telling the truth to? She shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. No, it wasn't like that. I wanted you to see me for who I am, not for my money. I was scared you'd treat me differently. James stared at her, his heart pounding. So you lied instead. Do you know how humiliating this feels? I told you everything about my life, my struggles, my dreams, and you sat there, knowing you could probably buy the entire block where I work with your pocket change. Natalie's voice cracked. I never saw you that way. James, I fell for you because of who you are, not because I wanted to deceive you. James shook his head, standing up from the table. You don't get it, Natalie. You had the choice to hide the truth. I never had that privilege. My entire life has been a struggle. I thought you understood me. She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, pain etched on his face. I can't do this, he whispered before walking out, leaving Natalie sitting alone, tears streaming down her cheeks. That night, James lay awake in his small apartment, staring at the ceiling. The magazine was still on the kitchen counter, taunting him. A part of him missed her already, the way she listened, the way she made him feel seen. But how could he trust her now? And yet, beneath the anger, a deeper question lingered. Did he push her away because she lied, or because he never felt good enough for her in the first place? The rain poured heavily outside James's small apartment window, mirroring the storm raging inside him. The magazine lay crumpled on his coffee table, the glossy image of Natalie's face staring back at him. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't erase the feeling of betrayal. He had trusted her, opened up about his life in ways he rarely did, and yet, all this time she had kept such a significant part of herself hidden. But beneath the anger, another voice whispered, a voice of doubt, of his own insecurities. Maybe she never trusted you because you're not enough. Days passed before James could bring himself to meet Natalie again. Her texts remained unanswered, but she hadn't given up. Finally, one evening, after hours of pacing, he texted her. "Meet me tonight, same cafe. We need to talk." When Natalie arrived, the tension was palpable. She looked beautiful, as always, but there was a softness to her eyes tonight, an almost pleading vulnerability James hadn't seen before. "James," she said softly, slipping into the seat across from him. "Thank you for meeting me." James stared at his coffee, unable to meet her gaze right away. His knuckles were white against the ceramic cup. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice was low, controlled, but laced with hurt. Natalie exhaled slowly, folding her hands together on the table. "I wanted to. I was going to, but then I got scared." Scared? His eyes finally lifted, sharp and accusing. "Of what? That I'd treat you differently? That I'd ask you for money? Is that who you think I am?" "No." Natalie's voice cracked. "James, please. It wasn't like that. I never saw you as someone who'd take advantage of me." "Then why?" he pressed, his voice rising. "Why lie? You sat there while I told you everything about my life, my struggles, my dreams, while you knew you lived in a world I couldn't even imagine." Natalie's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "Because I wanted you to see me. Not my money. Not my name. Just me." James shook his head, his throat tightening. "You didn't give me a chance to. You made that decision for me." The cafe felt unbearably quiet, the low murmur of other patrons barely audible over the pounding in James's chest. Natalie's voice trembled. "I've spent so long being defined by my wealth, James. People only see me for what I have, not who I am. And for the first time, with you, I felt normal. I felt seen." James clenched his jaw, fighting the conflicting emotions swirling inside him. "But you didn't trust me enough to be honest. That's the problem, Natalie. I thought we were building something real. But how can it be real when you were holding back the whole time?" Her lips parted as if she wanted to say something, but no words came. "I'm not angry because you're wealthy," James continued, voice quieter now but no less pained. "I'm angry because you didn't think I could handle the truth. Like I wasn't. Enough for you to be honest with." Natalie's heart ached at his words. She hadn't meant to hurt him, she had only wanted to protect herself. But now she saw how deeply she had wounded him. "I never thought you weren't enough," she whispered, leaning forward. "James, you're the kindest, most genuine person I've ever met. But I was afraid. Afraid you'd walk away once you knew the truth. I didn't want to lose you." James shook his head, blinking hard. "You've already lost me, Natalie." The words felt like a dagger to her chest. "I can't do this," he added, standing up. "I can't be with someone who doesn't trust me enough to be honest. No matter how much I—" He stopped himself, the words lodging painfully in his throat. "Natalie," her voice breaking, whispered, "James, please." But he was already gone. The days that followed were empty. For James, the pain didn't fade, it lingered, gnawing at the edges of his mind. His thoughts cycled between anger and longing. He missed her laugh, her thoughtful questions, the way she made him feel truly seen, at least, he had thought so. But the nagging voice inside him kept whispering. She never really believed you could handle the truth. For Natalie, the ache was unbearable. She had tried so hard to find something real, someone who would love her for who she was, not her fortune. And in the process, she had destroyed the very thing she cherished most. Late at night, she often found herself rereading James's old texts. The way he had opened up, shared his dreams so openly with her. And now, he was gone. But deep down, she held on to one fragile hope. If James truly loved her, maybe, just maybe, he would find a way back. But for now, all she could do was wait and hope. The days passed slowly, heavy with the weight of words unspoken. James found himself lost in the quiet aisles of the bookstore where he worked, mechanically sorting through old novels while his mind remained restless. No matter how much he tried to distract himself, Natalie lingered, her voice, her laughter, the way she had looked at him with genuine warmth. But alongside those memories was the echo of his own harsh words. "You didn't trust me enough to be honest." At the time, it had felt justified. Now it felt like a wound he had inflicted on both of them. One rainy evening, while closing the store, James found himself drawn to the old, worn journal section. His hand hovered over a leather-bound notebook, its pages untouched yet inviting. He sat at the counter, the store silent except for the gentle patter of rain against the window. And then, almost without thinking, he began to write. "Dear Natalie, I've replayed our last conversation so many times that I've lost count. When I found out the truth, I was hurt. Not because you're wealthy, but because I felt like you didn't believe I was strong enough to handle it. I let that pain speak louder than my heart, and for that, I'm sorry. You once said you wanted me to see you for who you really are. The truth is, I always did. I saw your kindness, your patience, the way you listen when I ramble about books no one else cares about. I saw the woman who made me believe in something I thought I had lost. It was never about the money. It was you. And I'm sorry I let my insecurities ruin something so rare. If there's even the smallest chance you can forgive me, I'd like to make things right. Not with words, but with actions. James." The next morning, James carefully folded the letter, slipped it into a cream-colored envelope, and addressed it simply, Natalie Sinclair. He didn't trust a courier for this. This was too personal. So after his shift ended, he made his way to Natalie's townhouse. The grand exterior seemed more intimidating than ever, a reminder of the world she belonged to, one he had convinced himself he couldn't be a part of. But this time, he didn't turn away. He slipped the letter under the door, exhaled deeply, and walked back into the rain. Natalie was working in her home office when the soft sound of paper sliding across the hardwood caught her attention. Curious, she set down her pen and approached the door, heart skipping as she saw the envelope. Her name, James's handwriting. Hands trembling, she unfolded the letter and began to read. With each word, her chest tightened. The vulnerability, the sincerity, the raw honesty. Tears welled in her eyes. For days she had told herself it was over, that James had walked away forever. But this letter, it wasn't just an apology. It was love. That evening, Natalie made a decision. She wasn't going to let fear dictate her life anymore. The next morning, as James restocked shelves at the bookstore, he heard the familiar chime of the bell above the door. He turned, and there she was. Natalie in a simple white sweater and jeans, no designer labels, no pretense, just her. And in her hand, his letter. For a moment, they simply stood there, both unsure of how to start. Then Natalie spoke, her voice trembling but determined. "I read your letter," she whispered, stepping closer. "And you were right. I was scared of losing you, of being judged, of being seen as just the money. But the truth is, James, none of that ever mattered when I was with you. It was always you I cared about. Always." James swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "I was scared too. Scared I wasn't enough for you. I let my pride get in the way of what really mattered." She shook her head, her eyes shining. "You were always enough. You still are." Silence stretched for a beat before she reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small folded document. "What's this?" James asked, taking it hesitantly. Natalie offered a soft smile. "It's a business proposal. I know you've always dreamed of opening your own bookstore. And I'm not giving you this out of pity or guilt. I'm offering to invest in you. Because I believe in you, James." James blinked, overwhelmed. "Natalie, I can't just take your money. I need to do this on my own." "I know," she replied gently. "That's why it's not a gift. It's a partnership. You make the decisions. You build your dream. I just want to be part of it, part of your life, if you'll let me." James stared at her, the words sinking in. This wasn't about charity. This was trust. And he realized in that moment that he trusted her too. He reached out, cupping her face gently, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't need the bookstore to know what matters most. It's you, Natalie. It's always been you." Their lips met in a kiss that felt like forgiveness, like hope, like a new beginning. And for the first time, both of them knew this was real. The weeks after their heartfelt reunion were transformative. Though Natalie's offer had been genuine and heartfelt, James had made his decision clear. "I can't take your help, Natalie," he had said softly but firmly, holding her hands in his. "Not because I don't trust you, but because I need to prove to myself that I can do this." Natalie hadn't argued. She saw the fire in his eyes, the unwavering determination that made her admire him even more. But that didn't mean she wouldn't support him in other ways. James threw himself into his dream with relentless dedication. Balancing his shifts at the old bookstore while saving every penny he could, he took business classes in the evenings, often staying up late to sketch ideas for his future store. And Natalie was there for every step, offering emotional support, sharing her insights from the business world without ever overstepping. When James finally found a small, cozy shop tucked on a quiet corner of Brooklyn, it wasn't grand or flashy, but it was his. He spent months renovating it himself, repainting the shelves, restoring old woodwork, and handpicking every book with care. The grand opening day finally arrived, a crisp autumn morning with golden leaves dancing in the breeze. A handmade wooden sign above the door proudly read, "Whitmore Company Books." James stood in the center of the store, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the comforting aroma of old paper. His heart pounded as he watched the first trickle of customers arrive, friends, neighbors, and even former colleagues who had come to support him. But there was one person he hadn't seen yet, Natalie. Then, just as he began to wonder if she'd come, the small bell above the door chimed. Natalie entered, wearing a simple blue sweater and jeans, her hair flowing in soft waves. No designer brands, no bodyguards, just her. And in her hands was a bouquet of white lilies. James's breath caught. She was breathtaking, not because of how she looked but because she was there, exactly as he had hoped. She approached him, a soft smile playing on her lips. "For the grand opening," she whispered, handing him the flowers. James took them, his hands trembling slightly. "You're here. I wouldn't miss it for anything." As more guests filled the space, James realized he needed to say something. He cleared his throat, stepping onto a small stool near the counter to get everyone's attention. "Hi everyone," he began, his voice echoing through the cozy space. "I just wanted to say thank you. This bookstore, this dream, it wouldn't be possible without all of you." His eyes briefly met Natalie's, and he felt his heart swell. "But there's someone here I need to thank more than anyone." The crowd parted slightly as James stepped down and made his way toward Natalie. "This woman," he continued, his voice steady but thick with emotion, "has been my greatest support. Not because of what she has, but because of who she is. She believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. She's shown me that love isn't about status or wealth, it's about being seen. Truly seen." Natalie's eyes shimmered with tears as James gently took her hands in his. "I love you, Natalie. Not for your last name, not for what you have, but for your kindness, your strength, and the way you make me want to be a better man every single day." A soft murmur rippled through the crowd as James's words echoed in the quiet. Natalie, overcome with emotion, whispered, "I love you too, James." The applause was thunderous, but James only heard Natalie's heartbeat as he pulled her into a gentle, lingering kiss. For the first time in his life, James felt whole, not because he had finally achieved his dream but because he had found someone who made the journey worthwhile. Epilogue, 1 year later. The bookstore thrived, becoming a beloved part of the community. Storytime hours for children, poetry nights, and book club meetings filled the space with life and laughter. And Natalie? She had become James's silent business partner, not because he needed her money, but because she wanted to be part of every chapter of his life. One evening, after the last customer had left, James locked the door and turned back to see Natalie arranging a new collection of novels on the shelves. He walked over, wrapping his arms around her waist, resting his chin gently on her shoulder. "You know," he whispered, "this feels perfect." Natalie smiled, leaning into him. "It does." And as they stood there, surrounded by stories of love, hope, and second chances, they knew theirs was the most beautiful story of all. And so, James and Natalie's journey reminds us that love is about seeing beyond wealth. Beyond appearances, it's about the connection of two souls who find strength in one another. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and comment your favorite moment below. And for more heartfelt stories that will inspire you, bring tears to your eyes, and remind you of the power of genuine love, make sure to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories. Thank you for being part of our storytelling family. See you in the next story, where love and hope always find a way.